I'll just resume plan A. So Odd has been introduced already yesterday. So please, I just leave it to you.
Is it okay like this? I don't need to talk like this. Is it high enough? Yeah. Okay. So good morning. I'll try to pick up where I left yesterday. So we've gone through this one, I think. Oh yeah, this one I forgot. A little bit of a short introduction about myself in terms of user experience design. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that, I also must say that in the beginning of Wikibase Solutions, we didn't know anything about HTML and CSS, nothing, and nothing about Chameleon. So we stick to the plain skin, but then we gained some expertise, and right at the moment, we have some people working for us that really know how to make a nice design, and that's very nice. So we want to use that. We want to be able to use that, to implement that. And of course, users give feedback. So I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about it, but I do know I want it. So, and I've done some. Of course, I've got some experience, and I think that user-friendly wikis might be about these topics. Reduce the number of clicks. I used to say that more than 3 clicks is too much. Perhaps that's a bit too ambitious. And of course, the great designs and performance. Once you make more complex wikis, more complex applications, they also tend to get slower, so you have to do something about that. Oh, wait a minute. Right. So, yesterday I explained about this guy who sells work outfits. So you understand it's important. I'm going to show you a small with some pictures, a small user interface on how we did that. Because just trying to show to you how you can reduce the clicks and what you want to do even more to make life easier for the guy who is there 6:30 in the morning, gets people that want to go to work that need their work outfit. So first, it should be perhaps even easier than this. So if you have ideas about it, please let me know. You want to know if he's already in the system. If he is not, I didn't put it here. You have a button, you can make a new customer. You get the form on the same page, and you can create him and then move on. And in the result, you get all the options that you want for the guy standing in front of you. So if it is about a new delivery, you in this case he's got different companies he's working for, each with their own stock. So you want to keep track of stock as well. So this is a form. I'm not going to show it live. That says, well, I'm going to give you these pieces of outfit, and then you get an overview, and you get a place where he can sign and say, well, okay, I received it. So I think these were 4 steps. That's already a lot. But for the guy there at the dispatching the outfits, it's okay, and it works nice. And we are always looking for opportunities to do it even better. And the tools, I think Friday, tomorrow, Victor is going to talk about the WS Form. I think WS Form is one of the important tools that we use to achieve this. One of the advantages of WS Form is that you can put a form on an ordinary page, so you can put forms in templates and on pages, and you can, with one action, you can modify more than one page, and you can send email at the same time, so you can do more actions. So that if you have that tool, you can make life easier for the user. All right, so that was something about reducing the number of clicks. Great designs. Well, this, I hope this is going to work. Lex, what do you think? It is. Well, here we have for SimpleGov, this is a design we created. So what you're looking at is the design implemented in HTML. So this is pure HTML. So it doesn't do anything. It's only the design. Well, I can tell you that a few years ago, I didn't think that things like this could be implemented in a wiki. I really wouldn't know how. If you go, it has a lot of information on it. It has some really nice, you see the, oh, you don't see that. It has a lot of information on it. It looks nice. So when our customer wants to have a design like this, which by the way, we made this design, so that's what I'm talking about when I say, well, we have people nowadays that are able to make good design, great designs. And then is the question, how are you going to implement that? Because, what am I doing? That would be the next step, of course. Well, I'm going to show you that. What it looks like. Why is it trying to do the same? Go to the page. It's linked to. You think so?
It should.
Here it is. I did the right thing. All right. So this is more or less the same page, but this is live. This is in the SimpleGov application. That's on the SimpleGov platform. So we managed to really take the design and implement it in the wiki, and it works nice. But underneath, it's just an ordinary wiki page. If I was logged in as an administrator, I could look at the source code, and this is an ordinary project with parameters, with multiple instance, template stuff. So under the hood, it really looks quite ordinary, but the design is not ordinary. So you might ask, you were probably wonder, how do you do that? What is a productive way to go from the design to the implementation, to the wiki? So what we do is we take the design, we create HTML, which is a step that many people can take. You don't need to know anything about wiki. You are supposed to know a lot about Bootstrap 4, because we use Chameleon 2 for SimpleGov, thanks to Stefan, of course. And Bootstrap 4 gives you a lot of tools to implement the design. So, and when you have the HTML, you can go to the wiki using widgets, because you can't use plain HTML in a wiki, but you can in widgets. So what we do is we take the large chunk of HTML of the design, and we see what can be put in templates. So if you have the ordinary div, the layout you put in template, getting the information you put in template, and then you feed the information to widgets that have the complex HTML from the design. So it's really quite a straightforward way to go. It's not very difficult. But you can, in that way, create a wiki with a great design. All right. Performance is very important as well. What we see here is quite a complex wiki. It's a plain project, but it takes a lot of information from different sites about ratings, about comments, about solutions, so it's quite complex. So but of course if you go to the page, you want it to show immediately. So what we have done is what we call lazy wiki. We implemented some mechanisms to lazy load parts of the wiki, which for me would be very complex to do. But it seems that with smart use of JavaScript, with Ajax calls, you are able to load the information at the right moment. So, but it's all focused on putting the main page on the screen as soon as possible and then deliver the rest later. So I think great performance is the third thing. So what do we use to deliver user-friendly wikis? Like I said, for Simple we use Chameleon 2.0, and that works quite well. And we think it's a very nice framework to build nice wikis. Skin. We use extensions such as SMW Cargo. SSD is I think it's a specialized way to store information, so it replaces, in fact, SMW or Cargo specifically for this SimpleGov site, because of the complexity and the volume. And we use WS Form, like I said, for the flexibility on the screen and to keep the user focused. Like I said, this is really interesting. Like I said, from design to HTML, through templates to widgets. That's really an approach that works very well, and it makes it easy to implement great designs. Custom JavaScript with Ajax. We are developing a lot of caching expertise because, of course, as you know, caching happens on different levels. So we are we are trying to use everything, all possibilities of caching, and that works very nice. Oh. What did I do? No.
One line further up. Yeah, right. Yep.
And yesterday when Mark was presenting, I also got some just-in-time thoughts. And the first one is that, of course, it's very important to have very short feedback loops with your customer. You have to be in a position that your customer and the users provide feedback. Users that are people that are used to work with, for example, applications like SAP. They know that nothing can be changed, and they try to figure out how they can use the system in their way. So they find all kinds of workarounds for their problems. That's not a position we want to be in. We want them to tell us so that we can change it. So very short. That's also important. And when Mark talked about authentication yesterday, I thought, well, what we are doing more and more is have users not log in, so but use a code. So have them identified because they use a code, and that code not only identifies who has the code, but also what he can do. And we have a small example. Good to stay there. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So this is a small example. So if this is the URL, this is a thing we created for Amsterdam. They want to know what health housing is in the city. Well, it's not interesting about what it is about, but there's a lot of people in Amsterdam that have to add their information that know about housing for health in health housing, and they have to provide their data, but they don't want to log into the system, and then they don't want that. So what we did was we use a code. So this is the plain page where you go to if you only have this URL. As you can see, I'm not used to Windows, but I'm doing okay, aren't I? So this is the same URL you're going. It still is the main page, but with a code. So all of a sudden, you get information. So obviously, you are Tessa de Bruin from Domus Magnus, and you are going to provide information. You're even able to add a new location for this company, and you can have a look at the locations. And add lots of information about it. So it's a very large form. Of course, those people know when they see this what they have to do, but they don't know anything about the system. They don't need to log in. So it's for the user. It's much easier. So this is also something that we do more and more for people that are not really part of the system's ecosystem, closed ecosystem. We don't want them to log in. we'll send them a code, we know who they are, and they can do what they want if they have the code. So, and that's a question that I haven't heard about that approach before, so I'm interested in hearing your opinion on that, by the way. But I'm not sure if we have time for that. Sure. So that's my question.
I like, oh yeah, go.
Okay, thank you for your talk. Regarding this authentication, maybe it's just me, but that's, in my eyes, this is not a real authentication.
No, it's not.
It's just a code, so you're not logged in, and you allow everybody that has this code to edit the information. You cannot tell who this is.
Well, you know,
and you even have this in the address in the query string, which I think is very dangerous to have.
Well, of course, you have to know when to use it. But the person who gets the code is, of course, known in the system, and you have the email address. So you send the code, you send the link to that person, and if that person chooses to forward the link to other people, then they can do the same. But that's then his or her decision. So you're absolutely right. It's a different approach, but it is a way to, and I think a user-friendly way to have people do their work in the wiki. But of course, you're right. It's not. It is
true,
not,
but it's not authentication.
No, it is not. No, it's not authentication. So that's what I said. It's login less. I said login less authentication. Ah, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Now, of course, it's not.
Someone else? Otherwise, I was also concerned about that while listening to your talk, but then I thought, essentially this is an API token. And if the API token is associated with metadata in your system, and it provides you just send one token, you can tie it to a lot of constraints, IP address, time,
right.
how many edits per, that will add complexity to the system. However, it would provide, and I like that, that you just send a link and do your work, but you could say you have to complete it within 10 minutes. And of course, those must be one time. So this is valid one time, and then it's revoked by the system. And maybe you can even, I know what you mean by authentication, but you could even have an extension that maps those API tokens to a user account and says if that API, no, not API token, whatever interface token, how you want to call it, it would be associated with that user account. So you wouldn't even have, a messed up history. But that's an interesting
the point
thing
is
to talk about.
The point is, Lex, that it's user friendly. You make it easier for the user, and everything that you mention, you can do that, but that's our job.
Yes, because we
don't
know
mind if it is complex for us, that's okay, but we want to make it easy for the user. And you can even combine it with user accounts, so that people don't have to, even people that do have a user account are not required to log in for this specific task.
Yeah, exactly. You could even link it to a namespace, to a task, to whatever. And if there was a Nobel Prize for usability, it would go to the person who can get rid of passwords, because passwords are, and the quality of passwords. It's questionable whether a good password. This is worse than a very good password, but maybe better than a bad password. And there's a lot of bad passwords.
Yeah, but now you're talking from the point of view from security, authentication. But we are more concerned about usability and also about risk.
It's a valid concern.
And about
Robert
risk, of course, you have to evaluate the risk, definitely.
So my newbie point of view, I love the fact that you discuss very technical points about authentication and all that. But as a newbie, as someone from outside the community at the moment, what I would love are a series of articles on Medium that goes from a raw installation of MediaWiki through given steps to a user-friendly wiki. That would be superb.
Right.
Well,
Got
I
it.
can or tell you that Robert is having a talk on security. I mean, right, the basic security steps and so on. So that would already meet half your request there. Anyone else? Yep.
Okay, I've got another question, not regarding the authentication part, but regarding the design part. So you said you're using Chameleon 2.0 as a base,
Yes.
and you're doing your designs first in an HTML, mock-up static HTML,
Yes.
and then transferring this to templates or
Yeah.
or widgets. Yes.
Yeah. So the widgets are essentially HTML templates. So you can put anything in widgets. You can you have parameters. You can feed them with the right information, and then in between you have templates that make up the layout and get the information. Because in the widgets you can't do any parser functions or templates.
But you do this all on Wiki, right? So you're
Yes.
defining the templates, the widgets, everything within a Wiki page.
Yes.
What about the HTML template? Is this also just CSS and MediaWiki Common CSS, or do you actually create a skin on the server side that derives from Chameleon?
No, we use the plain Chameleon mechanisms. You can add less files, but with the new Bootstrap, I think these are SCSS files. Yes. So we only use the plain. We don't think we create another skin.
Okay. Besides WS Forms, you do not have any extensions written.
Well, of course, we use a lot of other extensions, plain the usual stuff.
Yeah, no, but written by yourself for adapting the user interface, for example.
No.
Thanks.
He says no. So no.
That's it. So please, Cindy. Thank you. Do you have it up there, right? Can you pass that to Cindy, please? Okay, so Cindy's talk will actually be based on when Cindy criticized my wiki for the lack of attractive visual guidance, which is true because I'm not so much of a front-end guy. So I asked Cindy, because since I know Font Awesome, and I just know how to rudimentary place it on a wiki page, I said, why don't you come up with your smart iconography and maybe, you know, the possibility to tie in several libraries for that reason. So please, Cindy.
So you just jumped right ahead to my last slide. That's fine. Yes, so this came from a conversation that Lex and I had at the Wikimedia Hackathon in Prague. And actually what I promised that I would do for him was to make a modification to an extension that I wrote to support Font Awesome. And I have not actually had an opportunity to make the code change yet, but the next best thing I can at least talk about the topic, which was, and Lex came up with the lovely title of Smart Iconography for Your Wiki. But basically, the conversation we had was about a wiki that had quite a bit of text. And so it took quite a while for a human to read the text and digest what the key points were. And what I said to him was something that I've learned over years of creating wikis, that a well-placed icon, a well-placed image, can do a world of good for helping the user to quickly grasp the content of a page. And I have been fortunate already twice yesterday. The extension that I'm talking about that I use to help with this is called Title Icon. That came from an idea my former colleague at MITRE, Bernadette Clemente, had originally proposed this suggestion, and then we created an extension to add the functionality. And Bernard mentioned it in his wiki that he talked about yesterday. He showed an example of the icons with Title Icon. I suspect I saw it in the electrical installation wiki as well. So you can sort of tell. But I'm going to talk about the idea behind it, how the icons can help first, and then talk a little bit about the extension itself. It's unfortunately a little bit fuzzy, huh? So there's a book I read. It was first published early 2000s called Don't Make Me Think, which is a very narrow little book that has some great ideas about very ways to help with the usability of a website. And actually, I intentionally, because Lex gave me the honor of fiddling things around in the program and moving talks around, and I strategically placed my talk right after odds because it's very much along the same lines. What can one do to make a wiki more usable, more user-friendly to the user? And there are a number of very nice, concise suggestions in there, but the idea is, don't make me think. As a user, when I approach a website and I need to accomplish something, make it obvious to me what I need to click, what I should read, where I should direct my attention. And so one of the things, and there's a list of different conventions. Conventions are your friends, they say. One of the easiest ways to make it easier is to use conventions that people are familiar with already in websites and repeat them. There are a lot of things that we've just learned to get used to look for. And one of their suggestions has to do with conventions about how things look. Have standard icon, standardized appearance with icons. The video link, we all know that if we see that little triangle, it means play. So take advantage of that, those conventions that people are very used to, and sprinkle them through your wiki to help guide people through the content. So there are several key ways that I use iconography in the wikis that I've built over time. And I'll say before I probably should have done this before I went on to the next slide. When I worked at MITRE before joining the foundation, I worked with a number of customers to help them to create wikis, as did my colleague Bernadette. We would meet with our customers, and before we even gave them access to the wiki, we would ask, what are the key abstractions? What are the key things, the types of things that you're using in your people, equipment, locations, any type of thing that are the key abstractions that would become really the templates and categories and forms within your wiki. And then for those, what are the key attributes that you want, which would be the fields in your forms. And each of those key abstractions we would associate an icon with, okay? And that way, whenever the user would encounter this icon in the wiki, they'd know, that's a person, that's a book, that's a location. Very quickly, because people are very good at pattern recognition, and it takes longer to read a word than to just look at an icon and just very quickly grasp what it's referring to. So using icons to represent these key concepts in your wiki is one of the first things, and when I talk about the title icon extension, we'll see how you can assign these icons to these key concepts in your wiki. I'll show you how you can use icons in the sidebar if you're using a skin like Vector, to be sort of like a legend, to have listing your icons and what abstraction they're associated with. So if the user ever forgets what the association is from the icon to the text, it will help guide them. In the Chameleon skin, in the new Chameleon, you can actually add icons also in the menu bar. And so you could have your menus with your icons to also help serve as a legend to orient the user. So the title icon extension will allow you to, beside the title of each page, place an icon that will help you when you look at the title. Oh, you know, this is the icon for an author, and it's the page Agatha Christie. It must be a page about Agatha Christie, the author. And this will help you very quickly to orient yourself to what type of page it is. Also, you could put icons in the page text. I'll give you an example of a wiki that I built where when you've got a list of concepts within the page text, you will have the icon present with the titles to help show, to help the user parse the information. You want to avoid overuse. You don't want to wind up with a wiki that's, you know, with a page that's just full of icons all over that makes it actually more difficult to parse and to orient. So you have to find a happy balance. But occasionally, sprinkling icons in the text of your page can also help. And then finally, in search results, and that's a very powerful one, if you're looking for something in the search of your wiki, and you come back with a list of pages of search results, it can be helpful to have the icon beside the search results so you can very quickly see, that is the Agatha Christie who's an author as opposed to the Agatha Christie restaurant, I don't know. So it can help you very quickly to figure out what the correct search result is from a list. So there is a wiki that I created while I was at MITRE that fortunately was put outside the firewall and fortunately is still there 2.5 years later. Here's a link if you want to visit it yourself. But I've taken some screenshots of it because, you know, live demos. So in this particular wiki, it's a wiki to catalog malware. And the key concepts within that wiki are capabilities, sub-capabilities, behaviors, behavior instances, obfuscation methods, and attributes. And so these are probably I should say what Odd said at the beginning of his talk about not being a user interface designer is very much true for me as well. I did a first search on Commons. There's a suite of icons called the Farm Fresh icons that are openly available. The license allows them to be reused. These icons come from that collection and are probably not the most, I'm sure a designer would have come up with much better icons for capability and sub-capability. But the point is you choose icons to represent what it is you want in your wiki. And for example, behaviors and behavior instances, a behavior could be a certain type of exploit, a certain type of malware exploit, where a behavior instance is an actual occurrence of somebody using that type of behavior to attack a system. So we use the relationship, you know, the gear for the regular behaviors and the filled-in gear, the colored gear for an actual instantiation of that. So you can also add some, you know, relationships between your icons to help indicate where things are related to each other. You'll see later on that the behavior instances, if a particular exploit happened only in Linux or only on Windows, we overlay the logo of that operating system on top of the behavior instance icon to give even more information. So you can actually, with this general design, the person very quickly can pattern match and key on what the type of concept is, but you can even make available additional information. by customizing the icon. So this is the main page of the EMA wiki, and you can see that it's using the vector skin. On the side, we use a very old extension called custom nav blocks, but that allows you to do some customization to your left sidebar, and so allowed us to embed the icons in there. And as I said, that sidebar, not only is it a navigational element that you can click on capabilities and get quickly to the page that lists all of the capabilities, but also it does serve as a legend. You can always look over there and remember. Because I'm not good at user interface design necessarily from a perspective of choosing the right design element, capabilities and sub-capabilities, that 3 leaves versus 1 leaf, probably not the best thing. So I'm constantly having to look over at the sidebar on that one to remember which one I chose for capability and which one for sub-capability. If I were to do it again, I would choose different icons for that. And as I said, you can add those icons if you're using Chameleon to the menu. So here's an example of a page for a particular behavior. We know it's a behavior because it's got that gray non-filled-in gear. And the particular behavior is sandbox, detect, and evade. So that's the title of the page, but we can just seeing sandbox, detect, and evade, you would not necessarily know that that's a behavior as opposed to something else within the system. So having that icon there helps you orient yourself within their framework, within their ontology, to figure out where you are, what type of thing are you looking at. If you scroll down a bit on that page, you'll see that there's a whole info box at the top, but one of the areas in there is associated capabilities and sub-capabilities. And so it would have a list of those. And because that particular box can contain both capabilities and sub-capabilities, each one has an icon beside it indicating which one it is. And then below that, there's just a general area that says associated with Sandbox Detective Egg. What are other pages within the wiki that are linked either to or from this page, and they just wind up being in this grid underneath, each one with an icon, so we can see that in this case all of them are behavior instances, 3 of which are instances, behavior instances that occur on a Windows system, and 1 that's a Linux one. Okay, so you can get a lot of information from that very quickly just by looking at the icons. And finally, in the search results, thank you.
For the screaming.
Much better. Excellent. Thank you. I can even hear myself better now. So finally, on the search result page, you can see I searched for the term sandbox, and that resulted in the targeted sandbox attribute, the sandbox obstruction behavior, sandbox detect and evade behavior, virtual machine detect and evade behavior, and the injected DLL testing behavior instance. So again, it helps you very quickly figure out, but what I'm looking for is behavior instances, so I can visually scan down very quickly and key on the search results that are of the type that I'm looking for. And I'll just throw this in quickly. Also, there's an extension that we wrote that's not actively maintained, although I'd love to get back to it someday, called Wiki, which is a way of creating a graph of the relationships between pages in your wiki. And so within the EMA wiki, on any page, you can click on the sidebar a link to graph this page, and it will go and it will query the wiki database for the relationships, the links in and out of every page with the page. In this case, we started from applicable platform in the middle, and you can see around it the links to other pages, and there is a supplementary extension to Wiki called Wiki Title Icon that if you have Title Icon installed on your wiki will show the icons in the graph as well, which again is another way to very quickly look at this relationship between pages and key on which ones you're most interested in. So title icon. Title icon, I wrote many years ago. It is based upon having a Semantic MediaWiki property. By default, that property is called title icon, although you can change the name. And that is the name of a file page within the wiki. You upload a file to your wiki and then refer to it in this property. When a page is rendered that has this property on the page, the file is scaled and placed on the sidebar to the left of the title, or it will put it to the right if you've got an RTL language. It will look on the page as well as on every category page for the categories that page belongs in. So for example, if you had a category authors, you could set this property, the title icon property, on the category authors, and automatically every page that's in that category would get that icon. It's also possible to have multiple icons. I think I saw an example of that in your wiki yesterday, where you can actually have even more than one icon on the title bar if a particular page fits into multiple categories or can be identified in several different ways. So it's possible. What we typically did would set the property within a template that's on the page, and that works as well. So when the page is being rendered, there's a Semantic MediaWiki query that queries for the property. So since it's stored in a Semantic MediaWiki property, you can also query for that property from other places. So for example, if you are creating a table of pages and you want to have a column with the title icons beside, or within where you identify the name of the page, and you want the title icon to appear there, because it's a semantic property, you can query the file, this title icon property, to get the file to display an image in your results. So this brings me to the conversation that Lex and I had, where he said, this is great, but could it work with Font Awesome? I had already had a request from a user that's, there's actually been a patch sitting out there for a while. I don't have as much time to maintain my extensions anymore, sadly, but I do intend to return to them. So there is already a patch for using Unicode characters to have those characters displayed. And somebody showed me an example of where, how with Unicode you can combine different icons. So if you have a woman icon and a computer icon, you can combine it and get a woman sitting behind a computer. And so you can do that to create some complex icons. So there is a patch out there, but it has not yet been merged. Because there's a question of how to represent these different types of sources of icons. Right now, all you do is set a semantic property, and that property value is interpreted as the name of a page in the file namespace. So there was, I don't remember the exact implementation, but I think it was you search for the ampersand that starts Unicode, and if that's there, then we interpret it as a Unicode string. Otherwise, and I don't really like that solution too well. So what I prefer is to have some sort of JSON structure that represents, for example, what is the type and what is the value. So this particular icon happens to be a Font Awesome icon. This one happens to be Unicode. But that would be a breaking change to the interface of title icon. So once you start thinking about breaking changes, then all bets are off, and you start thinking about all sorts of things you could do. So this was the extension came to being many years before cargo was a sparkle in Jeroen's eye, so it did not get implemented. There was no cargo implementation for it at that point, and didn't go back and add that. But now that there's this multi-content revisions implementation in MediaWiki, I wonder whether having a slot on the page that had some JSON stored on it that said, had a list, an array of types and icons that you could use. Maybe that would be a great implementation, but that would mean I'd have to go and actually add some functionality to multi-content revisions and figure out how to refer to it from the extension. So that's a lot of work. But that's a potential, or I could just add another semantic property, or a sub-object, I guess, with that would be typed. But that would again be a breaking change. If the icons are no longer stored in semantic properties, then there needs to be a way to query them if you want to have them displayed elsewhere in your wiki. So that's why I said possibly adding a parser function that would return the title icons on a page. Alternate icon types. There's a task out there where somebody maybe in this room, had requested the ability to tie a link target to an icon. So if you click on the icon, it will take you somewhere other than to, now I'm trying to remember where the link target, if you click on the icon, where it takes you. It takes you to where? To the category page, yeah. If it came from the category, it'll take you to the category page. Yeah. So, but maybe you want to take you somewhere else to some other page in your wiki. So an ability somehow, and that would also, if you had a richer structure for specifying the title icons, some sort of a JSON structure, you could say the type, you could say the target, and it would be a little bit richer. Right now, title icons aren't associated with namespaces, but perhaps could be a way. There had been a request for that as well. So it would look, somehow you would have to identify the title icon per namespace, but then if a page occurred in that namespace, it would automatically get assigned a particular title icon. And then, so there's another extension that I wrote that gets used pretty widely, which is display title. And that's one where if you use for the actual name of your page, the page title, just a string of random digits, but you want to have the link displayed as some human readable string, which since it's not the actual page title, the page title, which is the random string of digits, will stay, that's a permalink that will stay the same forever. But you may, find a typo in the user-friendly title, or you may decide to change the user-friendly title. And so there's a magic word in MediaWiki, display title, that you can use to set a display title for a page. And the display title extension will, whenever there's a link to that page, will replace the link text with the display title text, the user-friendly page name. So when Lex and I were brainstorming about this, one of the other ideas was potentially merging title icon into display title, and that way you could optionally have it where if you displayed a link to a page, in addition to the human readable, user-friendly link, it could also display the title icon there. And I sort of go back and forth on that. That's something you definitely wouldn't want to have enabled at all times for all pages, because then you could wind up with what I said earlier, which is basically an overuse of icons, and it could become actually more difficult to parse your page because of all of the embedded icons. So at any rate, so one of the things that I would love at this point is feedback. If there's anybody who has used title icon that has any ideas about the future enhancements, anybody who hasn't used it but thinks that something might be useful to them. And I think that was the last slide. Well, yeah, I think that's the last. So, questions? You've been so patient.
Now you can listen better to me. Do you have internet access on your computer?
Yes.
Could you please go to the Semantic MediaWiki site? I just added a page called icons in reference to what you did there, and I hope that others will be sharing their own experiences also there. So if you look there for the page icons,
Okay.
just use the search bar, recent changes, or search for icons and you'll be done. Yeah, there. Yeah, there it is. That's the page.
Okay.
So I'm referencing your thing, and I'm going to talk to Lex about that. If we could click through the 5 things, I can shortly give like 10 seconds for every link. This is the first one referencing your Font Awesome issue. This is the whole set of Font Awesome icons simply imported, and if somebody wants to know how that works, I can explain that. If you go back, there is another link showing the template for icons that we use in our wiki. So you have a simple way to just name the icon and give the size, and then it will show. The next one is about material design. It's another set of icons that you can get, and this is a small script that I put on Stack Overflow if you'd like to get all the Google material design icons, how you can copy those. The next one is about big stock. That's what we use a lot. If you scroll down, you'll see the different options there. This also uses semantic property to see whether you bought the icon or not, and then it shows it either with a copyright or without one. And to steer that, the last page does that. This is the big stock paid. You simply enter the things you paid for, and they'll show up there. And if you paid for them, you can use them in your wiki. If you didn't, they'll show up with a copyright.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, that was extremely interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm really a newbie, so this might be an incredibly naive question. Can you link to the properties in Wikidata? Say that you've got a Wikipedia page, a namespace, and of course there's a corresponding Wikidata item, and there are properties on that Wikidata item, and you're interested in representing iconically one of those properties, for example, occupation, and you want it to pull the occupation that's associated with that property from Wikidata and represent that with an icon for everyone.
The simple answer is, yeah, sure, you can do anything. So the part that I'm just sort of finessing over is the making the query to Wikidata, getting everything back in a format that you can parse. But we saw yesterday that could indeed be done using, I believe, external data. So once you get these things back, you parse out the occupation field. Once you have that field, you can then in a template do whatever you want and definitely assign, you could certainly assign an icon to it that you would use to display with it wherever it appears. So yeah, so there's several steps involved there, but once you actually have the data you need in hand, then how you choose to render it, absolutely, having icons associated with it could be very useful.
Another question is it possible to show the icons in a result set from a semantic read-down page? So we have to or set our filter, but we can specify that the image, we have to show the image like an icon. So maybe the name of the file will show, and this is not what I want.
No, you can definitely convert that into, I believe that there is a configuration variable that you have to set that I usually set by default that allows you to use the image tag within your wiki. So I set that once years ago and then just copy my settings file. So, but I believe there is indeed a allow image tag configuration variable or something. And then what you do is your result format, you just use a template on your result format, and then take the result, which is the name of the title icon, and put it in the appropriate tag.
There is an easier approach to do this, but unfortunately you have to specify your semantic link as text. If it was page, it would be easier, because what I was doing in my wiki is I save a second semantic property with the type page, and if you display it in a table, it will actually show.
It shows.
So that would be, so I save it double, which is not, it doesn't cost a lot, but it would be easier if the semantic property would not have to be of type text,
Yep.
but of type page. So
Yeah, that was a decision that we made early on, possibly because of not trying hard enough to make it work as a page. But yeah, because of how we needed to get the data back within the extension, it was easier if it came back as text. And that is the most common error for people who are initially installing title icon, is forgetting to declare the property and giving it a text type. The default property type in Semantic MediaWiki is page, so if we had gone with page as the type, that we would never have needed to have that property defined.
So the links I showed there, the templates, those go without extensions, and they use this approach. So you need like to parse stuff and say, if I want to get rid of the file :something, that's an approach. You can use an image tag. All these templates use tricks for that, and that's why I'm showing it, and so that you simply can copy those tricks and do the same thing. Because as soon as this is hidden behind a template, it's much easier than doing it all over the time. Semantic MediaWiki can get quite quirky, where things don't work as you expect. If you hide that behind templates or behind extensions, then you're fine, because then you can simply use that and it looks good.
Okay.
Someone else? Oh, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is always a epic and constituent element of all Semantic MediaWiki conferences, is Karsten's update on the software we're actually here for to begin with. So, I'm not sure if I'm spoiling the coffee. No, you won't. No, I tell you, it's a, yeah, but that won't be. I'll organize that. Ja, no, go on. Hast du sie hier drauf? Ich habe sie hier irgendwo, yeah, it should be somewhere. The first one?
Looks like it, yeah. Okay, so we... merci.
Yeah, I think this should work.
Ok. Yeah, bonjour, je m'appelle Karsten Hoffmeyer et je vais vous présenter les nouveautés de Semantic MediaWiki maintenant. But now I have to switch to English to not exclude everybody and to actually hide the limit of my French knowledge, language knowledge. So it's, yeah. So yes, so I'm talking about Semantic MediaWiki and how it looks at the moment. And yeah, and I will talk about the current status of the project. And I will be talking about Semantic MediaWiki, which I publicized a couple of days ago, and then a little excursion to how you can contribute to the project if you would like to. And yeah, so one thing is all our documentation is on Semantic MediaWiki.org when it comes to administrator and user documentation. There's also some documentation or a lot of documentation if it comes to coding and how the mechanism of extension itself is. This is partially on GitHub, but in this round I would say we focus on the user-facing docu. And yeah, this is an ongoing process which I must admit I haven't followed up too much this year because I didn't really have a lot of time to do so. So there's a pretty good backlog now, but at least I know the extent to the backlog because I just let's say create the page and say okay, it's a draft, no progress there, so I actually know what's missing. But yeah, if somebody would like to help here, then go for it. Yeah, so getting the missing documentation is a really big problem because programming and so on progresses so fast that I can't really, documenting this is it's been really tough, yeah, because you have to understand it and then put it into human readable text, and then yeah, it takes some time. And yeah, this wiki is still in transformation, so it started out as, let's say, pages which you had to scroll for ages and get all your information. And we are now trying to, let's say, more split it up and use actually semantic media for the wiki to let's say, guide people to, let's say, relate documentation or documentation which is important in the context of the page you are seeing. So that this is, but it's a lot of work to do. Yeah? And for the general information like these news items and so on, and general pages we have now, actually that's basically completed and just, let's say, adding up new pages which come along using the translate extension to yeah, to allow, let's say, the most important pages or the news pages and things like that to be translated into foreign languages. So, for example, I published the news item about Semantic MediaWiki 3.1 on the wiki, and 2 hours later we had already, I think, a French translation and the Greek translation of the news item. So it's, yeah, I could do the German one once in a while, but I haven't come around to do so. So, but that's working now, and yeah. So have a look. So then I'm talking a bit about selected extensions. There are mostly these extensions which are in the Semantic MediaWiki organization on GitHub, and these are the ones which are, let's say, there are eyes on these extensions. I wouldn't recommend to use all of them, but let's say the major extensions are working and published. And now I talk about a new extension that's, yeah, it's a kind of a revival with a different focus. This new semantic bundle, which was published in September this year, so early this month, was basically about installing and invoking the semantic extensions which are included in this bundle on your wiki, and really just focus on a semantic extension. Let's say the precursing extension, which was called semantic bundle, was also trying to do a better effort in integrating useful functionality which arises if you are using Semantic MediaWiki and the like. Yeah. But this one is just to allow an easier install of it. But still, here you still need Composer and so on. So it doesn't get you out of the misery that you can't install it with a tarball or so. Yeah. So there you still need a script to create your own tarball and move it to your server and so on. Yeah. So for people on shared hosting, it's still a painful situation, I would say, but in the end, using MediaWiki as such on shared hosting is not a very nice experience anyway. So we are talking about software adding to MediaWiki. So yeah, There's another new extension which is about to be released, I suppose. It's called Semantic Approved Revisions. This one basically takes the special properties out of semantic extra special properties extension, which relates to the integration with approved refs extension, which Jaron created, and allows, as I understood, for better handling and so on. There were always issues with extra special properties extension in handling this integration and these 4 special properties, which allow you to, let's say, to define things, who created the page, when was it done, which revision is currently approved, and what's the status of the page. No? The approved refs extension allows you to, let's say, selectively show different versions to the user, even though others may exist for that given page. And yeah, so I believe this should be done in October. I'm not sure how it plays with a new release, which was published about a week ago or 1.5 weeks, but we'll see. No? At least there are no fatalities and so on. The Sandbox Wiki, which is using this, it's still up and running. So yeah, but in the end, the functionality should work, and not the criterion is not to how do you say, kill your wiki or prevent it from being killed. So yeah. And there's a revived extension, Semantic Tasks, which Peter Grasberger was working on with Bernhard now in the past couple of weeks. And this one is filling a notification gap. So this allows you to send email notifications and reminders for different semantic properties which signify a state of a task or a state of a thing to do and so on. And yeah, and was extended to even provide more functionality than the previous versions did, and was modernized, refactored. So I'm pretty sure that we can really do a new release in October, November. I'm not sure how the progress now is, but it looks like it, that it's a thing to look forward in the next couple of weeks. There's one abandoned extension, so semantic comments was in use on some wikis and so on. But again, Bernhard was involved here, and he actually identified a cool replacement for this extension, which was always on the brink of going bellies up. So now we have a solution which provides you with a similar functionality and is more stable and watched after and so on, which Cindy created. So yeah, so if you are going beyond Semantic MediaWiki 2.5, then you would like to replace your semantic comments extension by the comment streams extension, and yeah. So yeah, and you even get more goodness from it. So it's a win-win situation, I guess, for every user. And yeah, you see this one is in Gerrit hosted, so it's yeah. So there are other extensions now, all new releases, Scribunto, which integrates with the Scribunto extensions, the results formats, the new thing, which was about 4 weeks ago, which brought the spreadsheet format, which is basically now replacing Excel, which is an alias. So your wiki doesn't break if you move up with a new version. And a nice, cool thing was which got integrated, was the Gantt format. We talked about this in earlier talks. So there's now a format which allows you to create such graphs. And actually it's a replacement of something which didn't exist in the past 10 years. There was, I think, some semantic Gantt format extension which was created by Frank Dengler in the early century, I would have said. Yeah. So yeah, And meta tags is now working, semantic glossaries, that's this version. So these are the extensions I would think you can use on your wiki without much problems to be expected, if at all. So they are pretty stable, or stable, I would say. Semantic extra special properties, that's the next release, then we'll move out these properties which are then handled by the new extension to integrate better with approved revisions. And yeah. So now let's move on to Semantic MediaWiki. And yeah, since the last SMWCon in Regensburg, there have been 3 more releases, so bug fix releases to the 3.0 series of Semantic MediaWiki. And now we are 3/4 of a year later, we just released the 3.1 version of Semantic MediaWiki. And I'm going to tell you about things which were introduced with this version, things which are probably better on, you will see. Yeah, that's what happens in the meantime. So there was a slight increase in commits in this period. So it's a pretty stable environment at the moment. No? And yeah, integration tests were increased now. So now with the new version, we even got more tests, which are, so each commit is tested against some use cases which should be working with the software, and which is constantly expanded. And that's a good progress too. But still, sometimes, you don't imagine what still goes wrong sometimes, even if you do a lot of testing. So, and this is how much installations were done now for Semantic MediaWiki. So that's pretty stable too, the usage. And yeah, so let's come to the interesting stuff. That's what you actually wanted to hear from me. So Semantic MediaWiki, I released it before heading off to the airport to Paris, because I didn't want to rewrite my presentation in this respect. So so I just brought it to the public, actually a bit later than planned. But actually, I didn't really manage to do it because of time constraints. And we will be hearing more about constraints in this new version. So it's, perhaps it even fits. No? So yeah, I already showed you in a previous thing between these two versions. So we had about 850 commits by 19 contributors, which is okay, I guess. And but it shows there's a lot of work in there too. And good commits can range from changing 2 lines to changing 2,000 lines. So it's, but so then we proceed to the compatibility. There were some changes now with the new release. So the new release dropped compatibility with MediaWiki 1.27 to 1.30. So if you're using an older version, which is abandoned actually, not longer supported, then you would have still to stick to Semantic MediaWiki 3.0. But I guess it's time to upgrade in the next couple of months, since 1.27 is really dead as a dodo. So So officially it's supported till MediaWiki 1.33, which is the last actual release we publicly have, but it's also tested against 1.34. So this is, I would say, working too, but there's no absolute guarantee here. No? And when it comes to PHP, so PHP 5.6 is no longer supported, so you have to upgrade to at least to your Debian 9, and or if you're still on a previous Debian, go directly to 10, and then you still won't have a problem here. So with the database report, when it comes to relational stores, that's unchanged. There haven't been changes to the RDF stores. and Elasticsearch stores, which there was no change at all either. If you now use, that's the difference, the main difference, because for the Elastic Store support, Wikimedia Foundation now uses 6.45 or 5.4, something, one of these. I think it's good to stick now to 6 point something rather than using 5.6. Yeah. Because then you don't have issues with zero search extension if you would like to use that on your wiki too. So yeah, and then if you're on this 6.4, what I did, I just prevented updating for this Elasticsearch on my server, so I don't get compatibility issues, because Elasticsearch actually moved further on, but supporting newer versions appears to be a frightful experience for MediaWiki. Yeah? And I'm not asking James Hong Kong what his experience is with supporting newer versions of Elasticsearch, so yeah, laisse tomber. Code coverage, you can see, these are now the versions we are testing. PHP and database backends and PHP unit versions we're using for testing, site language and so on. So that's basically the same setup, and that's all green. So actually the comments which were now made, I think that was one comment prior to actually doing the release of the new version. So all in green, and yeah, looks, from this point of view, it looks good. And yeah. That's again, this testing was increased, so about 10% more tests and assertions in general. So it's, yeah. Even I was able to place some tests in there, so it's, yeah. It's actually, once you've grasped how to do it, I'm specifically talking about the JSON testing mechanism, then it's, you can really be egoistic and, you know, write a test case for your special test case on your wiki, and you can put it in here, and when you know every comment is tested against what you have on your very own wiki. Yeah? So yeah, so in this case we can need some egoists here. No? And yeah, so let's go to new features. So new features and enhancements. The most, let's say, striking thing which faces you when you upgrade is that you now get an error screen, which actually tells you, that's when the top right thing, which tells you that you haven't done your schema updates for the instance. Tells you, why is this, and gives you links on how to proceed here. And once you are running the script, it instantly changes to let's say, progress screen, and which gives you some, yeah, let's say, rough idea how far the update progress has been done. And actually, I did these screenshots when updating Semantic MediaWiki a couple of days. So that's what you then have. So you can't forget to run your update script. And I think that's a good thing for admins who just, you know, pull in the new code and forget to do it. Sometimes, you know, you have so many things to attend to. It's a good reminder, because your users will tell you immediately, you know, I would like to use the wiki, and then you can move on. We got a couple of new maintenance scripts. The two I mentioned here are now more like last resort things. So if you think the caching for some entities doesn't really work, and we have on a couple of pages I have an issue when you could run this script and see if that, let's say, just brings your wiki on up to speed again. If not, then you would have to dig deeper into what the issue might be with your wiki. Yeah? And the same thing with query dependencies. If you update some pages and so on, the queries don't really update, then you could run this. But these are last resort scripts, so you wouldn't run them on a regular basis, but only if you really see issues on the wiki. And talking about Elasticsearch, we now got a new script which allows you to do selectively upgrading on this backend. Before that, you had to actually completely update the whole backend to move on if there was an issue. And only update, you can even narrow it down more to, let's say, things which were newly ingested and so on. So that's really gives you more flexibility in maintaining the wiki from behind the screens. So then you have rebuild data. We got a new couple of new flags. The auto recovery helps you if you're doing these updates with start and end revisions and so on. And the namespace, actually it's funny that we didn't have that before. It now allows you to selectively upgrade namespace. So far I did it via the query parameter, but because the new result can only be in this namespace, so that's how I did it, and that's a more direct way to do it now. So this is really a good idea. I'm not sure why I didn't come up with suggesting this, but James probably ran into some things like this too, so that's a pretty neat thing here. And in general, this script also now removes outdated query links, so there's even better maintenance done with a regular rebuild data script. So I'm sorry, it's a bit technical here, but so please still bear with me. Before I forget, these little numbers here I placed next to these, how you call it, bullet items and things and so on. These are the pull requests, which provide you with more information. If you think, I want to learn everything about auto recovery, you can go to GitHub and look at the pull request 3900 and learn all about it. And even see if a code changes, if that interests you, or how has he done it. That's the way to go. Yeah. So that's actually improvement from my last presentation, where I had just presented you with features and so on, and goodness galore, or if you can say this in English, I don't know. And now I can link you to the spot. That's one thing. The next thing, embedded query update feature, that was the source of constant questions and irritations and on. This feature was now, let's say, basically redone and refactored, and now should provide you with very good service on the wiki. Yeah? And I'm not sure, but I think this also should replace these couple of extensions which have been written to force Semantic MediaWiki to update ask queries and so on pages, no? And to trigger the display of most recent data status on the wiki. So this is most probably a thing which most of you would like to have a look at. No? And then you can see semantic statistics were a bit extended. You can see it's more detailed now, and it gives you these little information icons. You can hover over it and you get information about what's an outdated entity. You have no idea. So you hover to this little thingamajig and have a look, no? What it might be. And I think if you click on this link, you end up at an explanatory page on the wiki, which also should give you more information about what we are looking at here. Another big thing was this replication monitoring for wikis which use the SMW Elasticstore backend, and which was a really big effort, and checks for missing entities. So checks still, Elasticstore still requires a relational database for the IDs and so on. And it now checks, I have an ID in the relational database which isn't available in the Elasticstore database, and tells you, it's not here, something has to be done. No? Sometimes it's just a matter of purging the page and then we are good. And sometimes if it's in a general thing, it might actually point to a replication issue in the Elasticsearch instance, for example. So these are good indicators. Also, it might indicate you at the same time about outdated things. So it's actually in Elastic Store or in the relational store, but the revision versions, which are indexed, are different. So this tells you also that there's a discrepancy and you can have a look. For my experience, I'm running this sandbox wiki with Elastic Storage now for 2 years. It actually only happened once that the Elasticsearch backend went bellies up and had to be restarted and I had to rebuild the index. But in general, things run smooth here. So that's probably that's the good thing to know about this, that Elasticsearch Store really provides you with a stable and frictionless experience here. And yeah, and even you can have a look, if you see these messages popping up on a couple of pages, you can do, if you're on the wiki, you can go to Semantic MediaWiki special page and can see status information on Elasticsearch. So if this one went down, it would say, okay, I can't do any longer replication on it and so on. You can see here how it says last active replication and is it active or not. In this case, everything is okay. And the refresh intervals and so on, and then, yeah. Last active replication means it always updates with the last edit on the wiki. So if you don't edit your wiki for 2 days, then this date would stay the same, this timestamp. Yeah, but that shouldn't worry you if there's a tick there and no refresh interval is 1 second. If this is all okay, then you're cool. Yeah? So, yeah, here we got another, and list this here. That's a regular script which you can use. It was improved by these two script parameters, which are pretty good if you would like to publicize the script runs on the wiki as such. Semantic MediaWiki also now actually did also in the past 2 versions provides you with a special Semantic MediaWiki log, and you can pipe your script run results into this log, so you can see on wiki, okay, this one ran at that time, took so and so much time, and everything was okay. And as soon as entries stop appearing there, then you know, have a look at it, and yeah, there might be something in the water. Now you can use also, let's say, zero search. You could do it before, but now it allows you to either do a zero search query or a semantic query on the wiki. So Stefan Gamke and James Kong worked on, let's say, merging this together so that these 2, let's say, Elastic instances are accessible from the same wiki, which wasn't the case before. We had 2 how you call it, Elasticsearch, let's say, information containers, and we were, let's say, not aware of each other, even though we were dealing with the same wiki. Yeah, so we have a little user-facing improvement. So the standard display of a table and broad table format can be now made a bit more appealing, I'd say. The current standard appearance was a bit quaint in the meantime when it comes to appearance. So you now can have a clean output. Here you can still see it's also sortable. In this case, you would add class SMW table clean and then the sortable class, and then the thing is sortable. And another improvement is here if you want to have a bulleted list within a cell of a table, then you could use these separators and have these results and so on, which is a nice thing. So you don't have to do backflips or so to get this done somehow. Yeah, then we got a new display formatter. So if you're querying for an image, so far it would render the image as you query for it. Now you can explicitly say no image, so it just renders the page name of the image and doesn't do the rendering of the image as such. There are cases where you just would like to link to a document or image, and this is where you would use it. But I'm sure there are other cases for this too, so it's quite a snazzy thing too. And then the template file format was harmonized when it comes to the parameters to use for it. And yeah, where are we? Yeah. So, and then we got another special page which helps you with wiki gardening. So if you have redirects and no semantic reference, semantic redirect annotations, you could check these and let's say purge these pages, or if you see it's more, you can run a script to update your information. And yeah, another nice thing is now you have support for attachment links. That means it tracks the links of files you attach to a page. And it also tells you which type, when was last time this image was changed, and if it's a locally uploaded image or if it was retrieved from a foreign file repo. And actually this painting is from a French artist I know in Berlin. So it's, yeah, okay, sorry. And yeah, and if you query, that's the next, so you look at this. And the next thing is if you query from remote sources, you can define query sources in your local settings and then allow to or use, let's say, foreign wiki instances which use Semantic MediaWiki for querying. So you can query results into your wiki from a foreign instance that was improved by a further results link. So it actually is aware, okay, if I do a limit, it tells you, but there are no more results. Before that, it would just display you 10 results if you set the limit to 10, and then you wouldn't really know, is there more or not? Now you know. And yeah, the next one was a little request from Bernhard. I know, what's Klammer in English? I don't know, yeah. These little monkey things there, this my property and on this 4042, now you can prevent it from being linked automatically. No? So that's a thing you use in templates if you want to present, let's say, for example, translations of a property in the template and so on. But this link would so far was always linked or linking to the property as such. Now you can prevent this from happening, but sometimes there's no really need for doing so. It's a bit, I would say, similar to the headers height parameter to ask queries. And yeah, and now also that's a feature which Alexander was asking about, being able to actually hide in-text annotations which contain a link. Yeah, this wasn't possible. Such a syntax I put in there was not possible before. You would have had to use set parser function to do something like this. But with in-text, yeah. He had a use case for this, so it's, yeah, it wasn't a big deal to do it, so we got it, so it's a nice thing. And good, that's another big thing. I was talking about my time constraints to document constraints. So yeah, so we got now more use of SMW schema namespace, which was introduced in the last version. And now it allows you to specify schemas in a JSON format and using different schema types to more easily, let's say, define constraints. So you don't have to, on each property which should use some constraint, you don't have to fully add up a constraint schema like before. Now you just add, okay, I want to use for this property the constraint schema I defined here, and just annotate it with the constraint schema, and you get the link back to it. Nah? And yeah, and then you can see, okay, it tells you the constraint schema. It even in special browse definition, you can really see what's happening here. And we got a nice set of constraint schemas to use. So which is quite cool. So you can restrict to namespace, to unique value, to non-negative integers, or it must exist. And so on. All these things you already know from these special properties, which are still working in the wiki. And so yeah. And the shape constraint defines your set of constraints. This information item should this subject should adhere to, and the custom constraint would be something, if you need a constraint which isn't here, it allows you to program easily a custom constraint of whatever type. Yeah, the fantasy is the limit, I think. So there is no limit. Yeah, I'm bold here, yeah, but don't quote me in this one. And I think, yeah, the same thing, now you get an error list. So if you added some constraint schemas on a page and it tells you, okay, you violated that constraint, it gives you now via this special property the idea which constraint was violated, and you get a special page. You can work on it and go through it. Okay, there's something was done wrong here, and you can, let's say, do a better wiki gardening. Yeah? So you can go to all these pages which violated a constraint and look, what did your users do here? Do you need to change something or whatsoever? And another thing is this, we are now, I think we're approaching the end. The sequence mapping, so far, you know, if you annotate different values to the same property on a page, it gives you the result as it was stored. So if you would like to change the order of these annotations, you would have to remove everything and then store it in the right order again. So this sequence mapping gets you out of this problem and allows you to store these annotations on a page, and it gets, let's say, ordered in a sequence according to your sequence map. And that there's a special property group schema I created for this. It's mostly important if you have, you know, want to document publications. That's where I came across this issue, and you know, you have a first author, a second author, and so on. I know from the academic environment that's an issue, yeah, who is in the first spot and not, and that's you know, that frequently causes a stink if the order isn't correct. So here you can do something about it. And yeah, there are more features. You can have a look. I put a short link here so that you get directed to the same page in the let's say, what's it called, release notes, and can look around, and yeah, and then how you can contribute. That's a quick walkthrough. Feature quiz, you can file bug reports, you can even contribute code, write some tests, be egoistic here a bit if you have test cases, and yeah, you can even become part of a testers group. That means that you get a ping. There's a big feature which should be okay, but test it on your wiki or so. You could do that too. You get a ping and off you go, and you can report back if it's working for you or not. And yeah, you can enhance documentation. Yeah, mostly you will have to put up with me in this territory, but I'm always happy if somebody creates a documentation page. And translations, this is already working perfectly, and yeah, and all these two things are self-explanatory too, and yeah, that's it, I guess.
Thank you so much. questions to Karsten?
Thank you very much. So the Elastic Store,
Yeah.
can one say this is the new recommendation to use?
Not necessarily. It just depends what you want to do. I think the more data sets you have, the more likely you will be to put up with Elasticstore
Yeah.
when it comes to installing it and dealing with Elasticstore.
Okay.
And yeah, but it's I'd say it's stable. No.
Is it possible to have multiple wikis using the same Elasticsearch instance to store data?
I'd say so, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, no, can't tell. No.
thanks.
But yeah, should be easy to find out. No.
Some more questions? Otherwise, I can say we are half an hour behind, so we're going to have a coffee break now. I'm sorry, I'm going to merge your talks after lunch, and we are going to lunch a quarter of an hour later. That should line up the program for the afternoon then. And since I have 1 minute before 11...
Yeah. Okay, so thank you.
I want to inform you I have started this page on lightning talks and unconference workshops, and you find it above the program on the main page. And just read through that, add your lightning talks, and maybe add, you've seen that I put who can contribute and who is interested. For example, SMW integration tests. Apparently it's Karsten who can explain that to Bernard. So just please add whatever makes sense for you there. So please, let's go for, you have another question?
So I think you need to register or log in on the website to be able to edit the pages, right? And I did the process yesterday and got no feedback yet.
Yeah, Karsten is the master on that wiki. Okay, please, let's go for the coffee.